Hello. This time I'd like to talk about the movie The Student and Mister Henri. It tells the story of a young woman facing many difficulties in life. She fails her college exams, her driving test, and even her love life. Eventually, she meets an old man who ends up changing her life. An old man named Henri lives alone in Paris. A girl named Constance lives in a town far from Paris, preparing to take her driving test for the 5th time. However, this time, she is still struggling to pass the exam. She helps her father at his workplace but wants to leave her father's shop and move to Paris. This displeases her father. Constance is searching for a place to live in Paris, and during her search, she meets Henri, who is behaving strangely due to his old age. Henri's son had decided to rent out a room in the house, but Henri didn't want any tenants. Constance notices a piano in the house, but no one is allowed to play it. She likes the house, but she finds Henri rude and realizes that he doesn't want her as a tenant. Henri begins to make excuses to reject Constance, and after leaving his house, Constance continues searching for another place to rent. She had been involved with a married man named Arthur, and one day, while spending time with him, she found out that she had found a room for rent in Henri's house. Her dream of living in Paris was coming true, but she was disappointed because Arthur seemed glad to see her leave. After saying goodbye to her mother and brother, Constance set off for Paris. Upon arriving at Henri's house, she was given a book outlining the rules of living there. The first rule was that no one was allowed to wear Henri's slippers. That evening, Constance discovered that Henri didn't like his daughter-in-law, Valerie. He told Constance that Valerie was a crazy woman who wanted to put him in a nursing home. A few days later, while sitting alone at home, Constance thought about playing the piano. She had learned to play when she was younger but had stopped. Henri didn't like Constance playing the piano and asked her to leave. However, she convinced him to let her stay, but she didn't have enough money to pay the rent. After thinking for a while, Henri said he didn't need money, but in exchange for letting Constance live in the house, she would have to do something for him. He asked her to help him break up Paul's marriage and make him fall in love with her. Constance didn't want to do this at all, but Henri said if she agreed, her rent would be waived for 6 months. After thinking it over, Constance left Henri's house and came across a bar that was hiring waitstaff. She told a young man named Matthew that she needed the job, and she was hired right away. The next day, Henri's son, Paul, came to meet Constance. Paul knew that his father hadn't said nice things about him. Paul brought medicine for Henri and asked Constance to take care of him as his illness was worsening with age. As soon as Henri returned, he began mocking Paul, and Paul had to leave. Henri was pleased, thinking that Constance had started trying to get closer to Paul. Constance began working at the bar the next day, and aside from completing her studies, she also tried to befriend Henri, though she was never good at studying, which made her anxious. Henri invited Paul over, and Constance was preparing a meal to impress him. After a while, Paul and Valerie returned home, and after talking to Valerie, Constance understood why Henri didn't like her. Valerie was a very practical woman. So, Constance found it easy to work for Henri. She began flirting with Paul and trying to get closer to him. Their conversations made Paul, who was shy, feel happy. After a while, they talked about the piano in Henri's house. The piano used to belong to Henri's wife, so he didn't want to sell it or let anyone play it. This caused an argument between Henri and Paul. Due to the argument, Henri asked Constance to play the piano. When Henri heard her play, he started crying. Valerie thought it was because he didn't like the song and cried as well. However, Paul told her that he cried because he heard the song and remembered his late wife. Valerie, who had been talking about food, was confused, but Paul knew it was time to leave. The next day, Constance went to school, and when she checked her results, she found out she had failed again. She cried and started heading back home, trying to distract herself, but she began to feel like she couldn't do anything in life anymore. A few days later, Valerie came to Henri's house to collect some items. When Constance fell ill and vomited on Valerie's things, she started crying in front of Henri and Valerie, talking about her misfortune. She couldn't go home because she didn't want to work at her father's shop. At that moment, Henri told her that she should do what she loved. She liked playing the piano, but because of a teacher at school, she had to quit, and her father never supported her. Encouraged by Henri and Valerie, Constance sang a song she had written, and for the first time, Henri praised her. Constance wanted to learn more about Henri's wife and discovered that she had died by falling out of a window 30 years ago. Henri had been living alone ever since. Constance laughed, and Valerie thought she liked Paul. After hearing this, Constance tried to talk to Henri. Henri believed that Valerie had been with Paul for money, but Constance knew she really loved Paul. Therefore, she refused to work for Henri and told him to let her leave the house. The next day, she returned home, but when she arrived, she discovered that her room had been converted into an office. Because of all this, Constance told her parents that she had passed and needed to return to Paris. That evening, Constance had to return to Henri's house. In her helplessness, she had to continue the task of entertaining Paul according to the plan. She began asking Henri about Paul. She had lost hope for a better life, but Henri began trying to help her apply to a music school. A few days later, Constance began pursuing Paul, trying to attract him toward her. After asking Henri about Paul's likes and dislikes, she used that information and Paul began to feel that their tastes were similar. Paul couldn't understand that this was all a game, and as soon as he realized it, he began to like Constance whenever he had the chance. Constance expressed that she wanted to start a relationship with Paul, but seeing the age difference, Paul refused. Constance started to hate herself for this drama, but Henri said that once Paul fell in love with her, she should stop right there. She just had to break up Paul's marriage. A few days later, Matthew told Constance that he wanted to go on tour with her, but Constance didn't pay attention to Matthew and was instead attracted to a DJ named Simon. Seeing this, Matthew walked away from her. Constance's relationship with Simon began, but at that moment, Paul told her that he had also started liking her and wanted to start a relationship with her. Now, Paul had begun pursuing Constance. He went with her to the club where Matthew worked as a DJ. In that club, Constance found out that Simon had forgotten her while heading home. Constance said that her life wasn't good, but Paul made her feel better. And that night, he was happy, thinking that he had found Constance. Paul stayed out all night, which made Valerie worried. She realized that Paul was cheating on her, and she had proof of it. Henri's plan had succeeded, and Valerie left the house. Even after 2 days, Paul still didn't talk to Constance. One night, Constance learned that Henri had applied for her admission to the London School of Music and had introduced Constance to a famous musician. One day, Paul came to meet Constance again. Constance told him that whatever had happened between them, she wanted to forget it and that she had now found another guy who was the same age as her. Paul was heartbroken because, along with Valerie, he lost Constance as well. Not only that, the next day, his lawyer called him to court because Valerie wanted a divorce. Now everything was falling apart until Valerie called Paul. That night, he learned that Valerie was pregnant. With this news, Paul's marriage was restored, but when she told Henri about it, he wasn't happy at all and started asking whether he should keep the child. Paul was disappointed by his father's reaction and told Henri that when Valerie told him this news, he should have a better reaction, otherwise, Paul would never speak to him again. Paul also told Constance the news, and he said that he was now happier than he had been before in life. Constance was also happy now, but one day, her father found out that she had failed the exam and called her back home. When Constance told Henri this, he said that a father shouldn't take away his children's happiness, but Henri himself was trying to take away his son's happiness. Constance told him this as well. At that time, Henri stopped Constance from drinking and explained that the cause of his wife's death was alcohol, or that she fell from the building due to being drunk. The next morning, Constance began preparing to go home, and then Valerie and Paul came to meet her. The three of them waited for Henri for many hours, and when he returned home, Valerie informed him about the child she was expecting. Henri pretended to be happy for Paul's happiness, but over time, he could no longer bear the drama. It was time for Constance to leave, and before she left, Henri told her that she shouldn't wait until old age to fulfill her dreams. Hearing this, Constance went to meet her father and clearly refused to go home. She said that she wanted to become a musician and would stay in Paris. At first, her father didn't listen to her, but later, he understood that Constance was as stubborn as he was. In the end, Henri's loneliness also disappeared forever. For several months, she stayed in the same house and began preparing for the music exam, working hard day and night. She composed her own song, and the time had come to leave for London. Henri was sure that Constance would succeed, and he continued to support her, just as he had supported his wife. When she arrived at the London School of Music, Constance began her final preparations, and soon the exam day arrived. Constance passed several rounds of the exam, and a few weeks later, news of Henri's death was reported. When she went home, Paul told her that Henri had been happy in his final days because he had met his grandson. Constance had also moved closer to success. Constance said that she had failed the final round, and then Paul handed over Henri's house to her because she would have to stay in Paris for a few more months. Along with the house, he also gave Constance a final letter from Henri, written to her. In the letter, Henri gave Constance advice, saying that he had forgotten all his grievances. He advised Constance to never give up. With this advice, Constance started preparing for her next exam. The film ends here. Goodbye, and see you in the next movie.